the forbidden art of tattooing in the Middle Ages among soldiers, pilgrims, and outcast rebels. Tonight, we are going to talk about marks on skin, not the accidental marks, not the old scar from a knife, not the burn from a hearth, not the bruise left by a fall from a horse, or the dark line of dirt around the wrist after a long day in the field. Tonight, we are going to talk about intentional marks, marks made with needles, marks made with ink, marks made with knives, marks made with fire, marks made by faith, punishment, pride, fear, shame, memory, and the strange human desire to make the body say something. We are going to talk about tattooing in the Middle Ages, but we must begin carefully. The Middle Ages did not have tattoo shops with painted signs. There were no little books of flash designs hanging on the wall. There were no buzzing machines, no sterile packets of needles, no artist in a black apron asking whether you want it on the forearm or the ribs. No appointment deposit. No aftercare sheet printed in neat type. The art of marking the skin was older, rougher, more scattered, and much more difficult to place. It lived in rumor, in travel accounts, in religious devotion, in punishment, in the bodies of pilgrims, in the memories of soldiers, in the skin of outsiders, in the fear of being marked against one's will, in the hope of being marked by God, in the suspicion that a body with permanent marks might belong to someone dangerous, foreign, holy, criminal, or strangely brave. Tattooing in the Middle Ages was not one single custom. It was a borderland, and that is what makes it interesting. It sits between the holy and the shameful, between devotion and defiance, between the soldier who wears the cross, the pilgrim who brings Jerusalem home in his skin, and the outcast who has been marked so that every village, gatekeeper, priest, landlord, and neighbor may know he does not fully belong. So tonight we will move slowly. We will walk through a dim workshop. We will enter the port city where pilgrims arrive with salt on their cloaks. We will stand beside soldiers who sew crosses onto cloth and wonder whether cloth is enough. We will sit in a marketplace where a marked stranger pulls his sleeve down too late. We will listen to the small prick of needle against skin. We will smell smoke, sweat, vinegar, dust, wool, blood, and ink. And because this is a quiet history, we will not rush toward the strange parts. We will let them come to us. Let us begin with skin. Skin in the Middle Ages was not private in quite the way we imagine it now. A person's body could be read. A scar might tell of labor. A missing ear might tell of punishment. A branded mark might tell of crime or servitude. A pilgrim badge pinned to a hat might tell of a journey. A monk's tonsure told of religious life. A knight's scars told of battle, or at least invited him to speak as if they did. Clothing told rank, occupation, gender, wealth, region and moral expectation. But skin told older things. Skin could betray a pox scar, a birthmark, a wound, a burn, a missing finger, a healed cut across the face. The body was a record that could not always be closed. In a world before passports, photographs, fingerprints, identity cards, and digital records, the visible body mattered. The face mattered. The hands mattered. Marks mattered. A man with a scar across the cheek might be remembered at the next town gate. A woman with a branded mark might be judged before she spoke. A pilgrim with a cross tattooed on the wrist might be believed when he said he had gone to the Holy Land, or at least be given the chance to tell the story. The skin was not blank. It was social. It was religious. It was legal. It was dangerous. This is why tattooing is such a strange subject in the Middle Ages. To place a lasting mark on the skin was to enter a world where the body already carried meaning. One did not simply decorate the body. One altered how the body could be read. Now imagine a person holding out an arm. The skin is washed, perhaps not to modern standards, but enough. A pattern may be drawn, or stamped, or pricked freehand. The tool is simple: a needle, a small point of metal, perhaps a thorn in some places, perhaps a sharpened instrument that would make any modern health inspector quietly leave the room. The ink may be soot-based, or mixed from other dark materials. It is pressed into little wounds. The skin bleeds. The pigment enters. The mark becomes part of the person. There is pain, not overwhelming perhaps, but deliberate. A repeated sting, a controlled wound, a little shedding of blood. This matters deeply, because in the Christian world of the Middle Ages, blood and wounds were never just bodily accidents. The wounds of Christ were central to devotion. Martyrdom mattered. Pilgrimage involved hardship. Suffering could purify, prove, imitate, or display. A tattooed cross on a pilgrim's wrist was not merely a travel souvenir. It could be understood as a small wound of devotion, a little mark of suffering, a memory of the Holy Land placed not on parchment or cloth, but into the pilgrim's own flesh. That is a very intense way to say, I was there. Now, let us consider why this might be controversial. The Christian tradition inherited a suspicion of cutting or marking the body, especially through readings of old biblical prohibitions against cuttings and marks in the flesh. Many Christian writers associated tattooing or forced skin marks with pagans, slaves, criminals, soldiers of empire, or people outside proper Christian order. The marked body could be a degraded body, a foreign body, a punished body, a body that had been claimed by someone else. But Christianity also developed a powerful language of holy marks. The sign of the cross, the wounds of Christ, the stigmata, the seal of baptism, the mark of belonging to God. the idea that the faithful person carried Christ not only in the soul, but in the body. This is the tension. To mark the flesh might be condemned as pagan. To mark the flesh with a cross might be understood as devotion. To mark a criminal might be punishment. To mark a pilgrim might be proof. To mark oneself might be pride. To be marked by God might be sanctity. The same skin can be read many ways. This is why tattooing in the Middle Ages is not a simple yes or no subject. It is a question of who marks, what mark, where, why, and under whose authority. Now let us go to the road. A pilgrim is traveling. His cloak is dusty. His shoes are worn. His purse is light. He has crossed rivers, slept in inns, argued with boatmen, eaten bad bread, prayed in churches, feared thieves, followed other travelers, and repeated his destination so many times that the word itself has become a rhythm. Jerusalem, Rome, Santiago, Canterbury, Loreto later, a shrine, a holy place, a place where the body must go because the soul desires it. Pilgrimage in the Middle Ages was not tourism, though it could certainly include souvenirs, stories, bragging, discomfort, and the extremely human habit of comparing routes. It was devotion through movement. The feet prayed, the knees prayed, the back prayed under the pack. The blisters prayed whether or not the pilgrim felt spiritually elegant about them. A pilgrim might collect badges. Small metal badges from shrines could be pinned to clothing or hats. A scallop shell could show the journey to Santiago. A badge from Canterbury could show devotion to St. Thomas Becket. Such things told the world where one had been. But a badge can be lost. A badge can be stolen. A badge can be bought by someone who never went anywhere. A tattoo is harder to misplace. A mark on the wrist says, "The journey has entered the body." Among pilgrims to the Holy Land, especially in the later period, permanent marks became a way to carry the pilgrimage home. Eastern Christian communities in the Holy Land, especially Coptic and other local Christians, had long traditions of marking the body with crosses. Western pilgrims encountered such practices and sometimes adopted them. Now imagine the scene. It is near the end of the pilgrimage. The pilgrim has seen the holy places. He has knelt where others said Christ suffered. He has walked through streets where every stone seems ready to become a sermon. He has prayed at the tomb. He has wept, perhaps. Or he has not wept and feels guilty about it. He has bought small objects. He has touched relics. He has listened to guides. He has argued about fees. He has been too hot, too tired, too thirsty, and too overwhelmed to feel as holy as he expected. And then someone says he may receive a mark, a cross, a holy sign, a Jerusalem mark, something that will remain. He hesitates. Because this is not cloth. This is not a badge. This is the skin. The tattooer prepares the pattern. In some later pilgrim traditions, carved wooden blocks were used like stamps, marking the design on the skin before pricking it in. The image could be a cross, the Jerusalem cross, the resurrection, the wounds of Christ, initials, symbols of pilgrimage, or other devotional patterns. The arm is held out. The pattern is placed. The needle begins. Prick, prick, prick. A little blood, a little ink, a little pain. The pilgrim looks away or watches too closely. Another pilgrim jokes weakly. Someone prays. Someone winces before the needle even touches him. The mark slowly appears, not bright at first, not polished. It is swollen, dark, irritated. The pilgrim has brought the holy place into the flesh. Now, weeks later, he is home. The road has ended. The mark remains. At a winter hearth, he pulls back his sleeve. Children lean close. Neighbors look. Some admire, some doubt. Some ask whether it hurt. He says it did, but not too much. He may be lying. He says it was done in Jerusalem. The room changes. The mark is now a story engine. It produces questions. Where did you sleep? Did you see the sepulchre? Were the roads dangerous? Did you see Saracens? Did you bring back relics? Did you touch the holy stone? Did the tattoo bleed? Did the priest approve? Did the tattooer speak your language? Did you think you might die? The pilgrim answers, perhaps accurately, perhaps with improvements. All returning travelers edit themselves. The tattoo helps. A badge can prompt a story. A tattoo commands one. Now let us move from pilgrims to soldiers. Here the history becomes more uncertain and more tempting. Warriors in the Middle Ages were certainly marked by crosses in many ways. Crusaders famously took the cross. The sign of the cross could be sewn onto clothing. It could be worn on the shoulder, cloak, or tunic. It showed a vow. It made the person visible as one who had taken up an armed pilgrimage. The cross was a sign of movement, sacrifice, and identity. Most crusaders wore it as cloth. Some sources and discussions suggest that a few went further, marking the cross into the body through tattooing, branding, or scarring. Such acts would have been extreme. They would have made the temporary sign permanent. Cloth can be removed. Skin cannot so easily be set aside. This is where the soldier and the pilgrim meet. The crusader is both. He is armed. He is vowed. He is going to war. He is going to holy places. He is not merely a soldier in his own mind, or at least not ideally. He is taking up the cross. Now imagine a small group of men before departure. Their clothing bears cloth crosses. One man laughs too loudly because he is afraid. Another prays with more sincerity than he expected from himself. Another touches the cross sewn onto his shoulder. Another says cloth can tear. Another says flesh remembers. This is not a common scene we can confidently place everywhere, but it is plausible as a meditation on the meaning of bodily marking. A needle, a blade, a hot iron, a cross cut or pricked into the skin, pain as vow, blood as seal. the body saying what the mouth has sworn. For a soldier, such a mark could mean courage, or desperation, or piety, or a need to prove that the vow was real. The Middle Ages did not lack men who made dramatic gestures. If anything, it had too many of them. But we should also be careful. There is a modern myth that crusaders routinely tattooed themselves before battle so that, if killed, their bodies could be identified and given Christian burial. This is a neat story, which is usually a reason to distrust it. The dead in battle were often stripped, decomposed, confused, or buried in haste. A little mark might not solve much. More importantly, scholars treat this as myth rather than established practice. So we will not say that armies marched east with every forearm tattooed. That would be false confidence. Instead, we say this: some men may have marked the cross into their flesh as part of crusading devotion. The practice sits in the overlap between pilgrimage, soldiering, and bodily sacrifice. It was not the uniform of every warrior. It was an extreme sign chosen or claimed by some. That is more interesting anyway, because rare acts can reveal deep desires. The desire to make a vow visible, the desire to become the sign one carries, the desire to turn fear into a mark. Now picture an older soldier years after the campaign. He sits in a town or village. His arm is scarred. The cross is faded. Perhaps it was tattooed, perhaps branded, perhaps cut. The lines are no longer clean. His skin has loosened. His shoulder aches in rain. Younger men ask about the mark. He tells them of the road, the heat, the ships, the dust, the hunger, the terror, the holy places, the men who died, the foolishness of nobles, the greed of merchants, the courage of a man nobody remembers, and the strange silence after battle. The mark is a doorway. It lets him begin. It also lets him stop. He can point to it and say, enough. The body speaks when the mouth is tired. Now let us turn toward the darker side. Not all marks were chosen. Some marks were forced. The word stigma has ancient roots connected to marks placed on the body, especially marks of shame, ownership, punishment, or social degradation. In the Roman world, tattooing could mark slaves, criminals, soldiers, or prisoners. In later European traditions, branding, mutilation, ear cropping, and other forms of permanent bodily punishment could identify and shame offenders. The Middle Ages inherited and reshaped many older ideas about marked bodies. The criminal body could be made visible. A thief might lose a hand in some legal cultures. An offender might be branded. An ear might be cut, a nose slit, a body displayed, a corpse dishonored. The punishment was not only pain, it was memory. A visible mark says, this person has been judged. In a world without photographs and central databases, the body itself could become the record. This is where the outcast enters. A rebel, a runaway, a thief, a deserter, a heretic, a person expelled from the ordinary protection of the community. The exact marking practices varied enormously by place and period. We must not flatten Europe or the broader Christian world into one system, but the principle of visible shame was widespread. A mark on the body could make reintegration difficult. It traveled with the person. A fine can be paid. A prison term can end. A brand remains. A cut ear remains. A scar remains. A tattoo placed by punishment remains. The marked person carries the court with him. Imagine a man at a town gate. He has a cloak pulled high. He is tired. He wants to enter. The gatekeeper asks his business. He answers too quickly. A guard notices a mark near his cheek, or on his hand, or the edge of an old brand near the neck. The man adjusts the cloak. Too late. Now he must explain. Where did you get that? Who marked you? What court? What lord? What crime? Or was it not crime? Was it war? Was it pilgrimage? Was it punishment? Was it foreign custom? The body has made him answerable. The mark is an accusation before anyone speaks. That is the cruelty of forced marking. It extends punishment into every future conversation. Now let us imagine outcast rebels. A rebel in the Middle Ages might be many things. A peasant rising against a lord. A town faction member expelled after a failed uprising. A bandit in the forest. A soldier who deserted. A religious dissenter marked by suspicion. A man who refused taxes. A woman accused of helping fugitives. A body outside order. Did rebels have secret tattoo traditions in the Middle Ages? We must be careful. The evidence for organized tattoo cultures among rebels in Western Europe is thin. It is better to imagine marks more broadly. Scars, brands, signs, devotional symbols, coded marks, and the suspicion that people outside the law might carry signs on the body. The rebel body was already red. A scar from battle. A missing finger. A branded hand. A pilgrim cross that might be sincere or might be cover. A rough symbol cut into the skin by comrades. A dark mark made in defiance. A visible wound from punishment. An outcast did not need a full tattoo sleeve to be legible as dangerous. The smallest mark could become a rumor. Still, we can imagine the symbolic force of a chosen mark among rebels. A small cross not approved by a priest. A mark of a dead leader. A symbol of a defeated cause. A rough sign placed inside the wrist, hidden under a sleeve. Not a decorative tattoo in the modern sense, more like a secret wound, a way to say, I still belong to them, even if the Lord says I do not, even if the town says I am outlaw, even if the priest says I should confess. The mark would be dangerous because bodies were searchable. A man could be stripped, a woman examined, a prisoner inspected. A mark hidden in daily life could become fatal in custody. This is why the forbidden mark has such narrative power. It turns skin into evidence. Now let us slow down and visit the maker of marks. He may not be called a tattooer. He may be a local Christian in the Holy Land who marks pilgrims. He may be a healer, a barber, a soldier, a craftsman, a person who knows how to prick ink into skin because someone taught him. He may use a stamp, a needle, ink, soot, a cloth, a little pressure, a great deal of practical confidence. The room is small, or the work happens outdoors. The person receiving the mark sits on a low stool. The arm is held still. The design is placed. No one says sterile. No one says infection control. But people do know that dirty wounds can go bad. They may wash. They may use wine or vinegar. They may wrap the wound. They may say prayers. They may tell the person not to touch it. The person touches it immediately because people in every century are terrible patients. The needle begins. There is pain, the kind of pain that becomes manageable through repetition. At first, the body resists. Then it settles. The person breathes. Little wounds gather into a line. The line becomes a cross. The cross becomes memory. Now imagine the skin afterward, raised, red, tender, ink dark in the marks, a cloth wrapped around it. The owner of the new tattoo is suddenly proud and embarrassed. He wants to show it. He also wants it to stop hurting. The mark is not yet beautiful. Fresh tattoos rarely are. They are irritated promises. Only later do they settle into the body. Only later do they become part of the person's ordinary appearance. Only later does the wearer forget, sometimes, that others see it first. Now let us talk about women and tattooing. The title says soldiers, pilgrims, and outcast rebels, which might make the subject seem male. But women also traveled as pilgrims, belonged to marked communities, suffered punishment, carried devotional practices, and lived under systems that read their bodies intensely. A woman pilgrim could receive a devotional mark. A woman from an Eastern Christian community might bear a cross tattoo as part of local custom. A woman punished or shamed might carry a mark she did not choose. A woman accused of sexual misconduct, theft, heresy, rebellion, or association with outsiders could find her body made public in cruel ways, even if not always through tattooing specifically. Women's bodies in the Middle Ages were read with special suspicion. Chastity, fertility, marital status, honor, modesty, widowhood, pregnancy, scars, marks. A tattooed woman might be interpreted differently depending on place. Holy, if the mark were a cross from pilgrimage. Foreign, if the custom were unfamiliar. Suspicious, if the mark seemed decorative or private. Shamed, if it were punitive. Dangerous, if it suggested outsider knowledge. The same mark could change meaning when the woman crossed a border. At home, a cross on the wrist might be normal. In a distant village, it might become strange. A body's meaning depends on who is looking. Now imagine a woman returning from pilgrimage. She is not young. She has seen more road than many men in her village. Her wrist bears a small cross. At church, another woman sees it. She asks. The pilgrim tells the story, not loudly. She does not need to boast. The mark does some of the work. It says she has gone far. It says she has suffered. It says she has returned. It says her body has been to a holy place and has not come back unchanged. That is power. Quiet power. The kind that makes other people uncomfortable. Now let us consider the theology of the mark. In Christianity, the sign of the cross could be made on the body with the hand. It could be worn in jewelry. It could be painted on walls. It could be sewn onto garments. It could be carved into stone. It could be placed on books. It could be traced over the forehead or breast. It was everywhere. A tattooed cross intensifies this. The sign no longer depends on gesture. It remains when the hand is still. It remains during sleep. It remains when clothing is removed. It remains when the person is alone. It remains when temptation comes. It remains when fear comes. It remains when the body dies. This permanence is both comforting and alarming. A person might say, I belong to Christ so fully that I carry the sign in my flesh. Another might say, the body is God's creation and should not be cut. Another might say, the pain imitates holy suffering. Another might say, vanity disguises itself as devotion. The Middle Ages had room for all these arguments. Religious life was not simple agreement. It was full of dispute, local practice, tolerance, suspicion, reform, enthusiasm, and discipline. A tattooed pilgrim might be admired by one priest and scolded by another. A cross in the skin might be holy in Jerusalem and unsettling in a village that had never seen one. Now let us go to the camp of soldiers. It is evening. The fires are low. Armor lies in piles. Men mend straps. A priest moves between groups. Someone sharpens a blade. Someone cleans a wound. Someone sings quietly. Someone stares into nothing. War creates strange intimacy. Men who may barely know one another share fear, dirt, lice, jokes, cold, hunger, and the knowledge that tomorrow may be worse. In such a camp, a mark on the body has meaning. A scar is admired if it can be told as courage. A brand is hidden if it means shame. A devotional cross may comfort. A crude mark made by comrades may bind a group together. A tattoo, if present, would not be a fashion statement in the modern sense. It would be a claim. I have vowed. I have been there. I belong. I survived. I am not afraid of pain. Or perhaps I am afraid, and this mark helps me pretend otherwise. There is no shame in that. Much of courage is well-managed fear. Now imagine a soldier who asks another to mark him before a dangerous journey. Not because the whole army does it. Not because a rule demands it. Because he wants the body to hold what his voice may later deny. The needle enters. The soldier curses. The others laugh. The mark is crude. A cross, perhaps, not straight, not beautiful, but permanent enough. In the morning, he pulls his sleeve over it. He does not speak of it again. Years later, if he survives, he may show it when drunk, or when dying, or never. Some marks are not made for audiences. Some are made because the person needs the body to remember. Now let us move to a prison or holding place. A man waits for judgment. His hands are bound. He has been accused of theft, or rebellion, or desertion, or harboring a fugitive. The officials discuss punishment. There are many forms of punishment in the Middle Ages. Fines, compensation, public shame, imprisonment, mutilation, execution, exile, penance, and more, depending on place, crime, status, and period. Permanent bodily marking belongs to this world of visible punishment. The point is not only to hurt him. Pain passes. The point is to make the offense travel. If he is branded or otherwise visibly marked, the community's judgment remains on him. At the market, at the church door, at the town gate, at the inn, at marriage negotiations, at work, he becomes a walking record. This is punishment as memory. It is also punishment as surveillance. The body is made to testify against itself. Now imagine that same man years later. He is no longer young. The mark is faded, scarred, perhaps distorted. He has done some things wrong. Perhaps not all he was accused of. The mark does not explain. It only announces. People see it and decide before asking. This is the great cruelty of permanent marks. They do not allow revision. They do not say he was hungry. They do not say he was 16. They do not say the Lord was cruel. They do not say the accusation was false. They do not say he has changed. They only remain. This is the dark twin of the pilgrim tattoo. The pilgrim's mark says, "Remember my devotion." The punishment mark says, "Remember my shame." Both depend on permanence. Now, let us think about outcast rebels in a forest. Forests in the Middle Ages were not empty wilderness. They were managed spaces, legal spaces, hunting spaces, royal spaces, village resource spaces, and sometimes places of refuge. Outlaws and rebels in stories often move through forests because forests represent the edge of ordinary law. A rebel group might not have formal tattoos, but they might have signs, tokens, badges, scars, clothes worn in a certain way, marks cut on wood, words whispered, a hidden cross, a burned symbol, a mark made on the body because parchment can be seized and cloth can be changed. The body, again, becomes the safest and most dangerous place to keep identity. A mark under the arm, inside the wrist, near the chest, somewhere normally covered. It could unite. It could condemn. A captured rebel with such a mark has no easy explanation. This is why secret bodily marks fascinate us. They make loyalty physical. They turn politics into skin. Now, we should also talk about foreigners. Tattooing practices varied widely across the world. In some cultures, tattooing was normal, honorable, medicinal, protective, religious, or beautifying. A European Christian encountering tattooed people might interpret them through fear, curiosity, disgust, admiration, or theological uncertainty. Travelers to the Eastern Mediterranean, North Africa, the Near East, or farther regions could encounter marked bodies. A cross on a Coptic wrist, a facial mark, a tribal sign, a mark of healing, a mark of belonging. The Western observer might not understand the local meaning. He might call it pagan, or strange, or holy if the mark were Christian, or barbarous if he wanted to feel superior. Tattooing is often misread by outsiders. That too is part of the history. The same mark can be identity to one person and evidence of savagery to another. A cross tattooed on an Eastern Christian might be normal within that community. A Western pilgrim might adopt it as a special sign. A Western cleric might tolerate it if devotional. Another might mutter. Meaning moves with the viewer. Now let us spend a quiet moment with ink. Tattoo ink is not manuscript ink, though the two share a broader world of dark substances, soot, metal, plant extracts, and binders. The tattoo mark must enter the skin and remain. The pigment must survive healing. It must not vanish entirely as the wound closes. The tattooer may use soot, charcoal, lamp black, other dark material, mixed with liquid, perhaps with something sticky, perhaps simply worked into the punctures. It is hard to reconstruct techniques across all places, and we should not pretend that one method fits all. But the basic logic is old. Open the skin, add pigment, let the body heal around the mark. The skin resists and accepts at the same time. This is the strange partnership of tattooing. The body tries to repair the wound. The tattooer uses that repair to trap memory. Now imagine the tools. A small needle, a handle, a cloth, a carved wooden stamp in later pilgrim traditions, a bowl of dark pigment, a hand steadying the wrist. The person being marked bites the inside of the cheek. The first prick is always the most honest. After that, the body understands what is happening. The mind begins making bargains. Just a little more, nearly done. Do not move. Do not shame yourself. It will be over soon. The mark appears slowly, dot by dot. A cross is a simple shape, but not painless. Two lines, one vertical, one horizontal. In Christianity, it is the whole drama of salvation reduced to geometry. On the skin, it is also a wound. Now let us consider infection. The Middle Ages did not know germ theory, but people knew wounds could go bad. They knew pus, swelling, heat, fever, foul smell, and death. A tattoo is a controlled wound, but a wound all the same. If the tools were dirty, if the ink was contaminated, if the wound was not cared for, trouble could follow. A pilgrim might receive a holy mark and then suffer a very unholy swelling. The arm reddens, the skin throbs, The person says it is nothing. The traveling companion says it looks angry. A healer washes it. A cloth is applied. A prayer is said. Perhaps it heals. Perhaps the mark blurs. Perhaps the body wins. Perhaps the body loses. This risk is part of why tattooing carried weight. It was not a painless sticker. It involved blood, irritation, and danger. The mark had cost. A pilgrim could say, "I suffered for this sign." A critic could say, "You wounded the body God gave you." Both would have a point. Now let us return to soldiers and wounds. A soldier's body is already marked by violence. A sword cut, an arrow scar, a burn from siege fire, a broken nose, a missing tooth, a torn ear. Such scars are not tattoos, but they participate in the same social world of visible memory. A tattooed or branded cross among soldiers would sit beside these other marks. The chosen wound beside the accidental wound. The holy wound beside the battle wound. The mark of faith beside the mark of survival. To a soldier, the skin is already a map of risk. A new mark may not feel like violation. It may feel like order, a way to make one wound meaningful among many meaningless ones. This is one reason tattooing has often belonged to military worlds in many cultures. Soldiers live close to death. They travel. They form intense groups. They want marks of belonging. They also have poor judgment in camp after drinking. That last part should not be ignored. Not every historical tattoo is a solemn ritual. Some are made because young men are young men, and a needle is available, and someone says, "You would not dare." The Middle Ages contained piety. It also contained stupidity, often in the same person. Now imagine a soldier with a crooked little cross on his arm. He claims it was done in deep devotion before a sacred journey. His friend says it was done after too much wine in Acre. Both may be true in spirit. History rarely gives us the clean version people prefer. Now let us consider the outcast rebel again, but more quietly. He is not romantic. He is cold. His boots are poor. He has a mark on the upper arm made by comrades during a failed rising. It is not artistic. It is a sign only a few men know. A forked shape, a cross with a slash, a letter, something local. Something that meant, while hope lasted, that they belonged to a cause. The cause failed. The leaders were hanged. The survivors scattered. Now the mark is dangerous. He thinks of cutting it out. But scars also speak. He thinks of burning it. But burns speak too. He keeps it covered. At night, by firelight, he looks at it. It no longer feels brave. It feels like a question. Was it worth it? The skin does not answer. It only remembers. This is the mood of forbidden tattooing. Not only defiance, not only romance, but aftermath. Marks last longer than certainty. Now let us talk about saints and stigmata. Some holy people were believed to receive the wounds of Christ miraculously in their bodies. These were not tattoos. but they shaped how Christians thought about marked flesh. A wound could be shameful, but it could also be holy. A mark could be punishment, but it could also be divine favor. A body could become a text written by God. This mattered for devotional marking. If Christ's wounds were central to salvation, if saints could bear holy marks, if baptism could be understood as a spiritual seal, then a cross in the skin could be seen by some as a physical echo of belonging. Not everyone would approve, but the logic existed. A pilgrim tattoo was not merely decoration. It could be a claim that the body had been transformed by contact with the holy. The pain of the needle became a small imitation of suffering, a little martyrdom, not death, not torture, just enough blood to matter. Now let us contrast that with punitive marks. A punished person also suffers, but the meaning is imposed. The pilgrim says, "I choose this mark." The criminal is told, "This mark chooses you." The soldier says, "This cross proves my vow." The deserter's brand says, "This man failed his duty." The rebel's hidden sign says, "I belong to the forbidden group." The court's mark says, "You belong to shame." The difference is consent. Consent changes everything. A wound chosen for devotion can become pride. A wound forced by authority can become prison. The skin may look similar. The story underneath is opposite. Now let us go to a market town. It is late afternoon. Vendors are packing. A traveler sits near an alehouse. His sleeve slips. A small dark cross shows on his wrist. The alewife sees it. She asks whether he has been to Jerusalem. He says yes. A man nearby says anyone can prick a cross on himself. The traveler slowly looks at him. Now the room waits. A tattoo is never just a tattoo in a suspicious community. It demands interpretation. Is this man holy, a liar, a veteran, a penitent, a rogue, a foreigner, a fool? He begins his story. He speaks of the sea, of heat, of churches, of guards, of money paid, of a guide, of the place where the mark was made. The room listens. Even the skeptical man listens. The cross has bought the traveler a little authority, not complete trust, but attention. Sometimes that is enough. Now imagine the opposite. A stranger enters with a mark that looks punitive. People do not gather warmly. They lower voices. A mother pulls a child closer. The alewife asks for payment first. The gatekeeper remembers his face. The priest watches him at Mass. The mark has also bought attention, but of a different kind. This is the central power of bodily marks in the Middle Ages. They do not merely decorate the person. They change how the person enters a room. Now let us consider concealment. Where would a person place a mark? The wrist is visible enough to show devotion, but easy to cover. The forearm can be shown at will. The forehead, in some traditions, is a public mark that cannot easily be hidden. The hand is visible and risky. The chest is intimate. The shoulder is private unless clothing shifts. A punitive mark might be placed where others could see it. A devotional mark might be placed where the wearer could reveal it. A secret rebel mark would need cover. Placement is meaning. A cross on the wrist says, "Ask me." A brand on the face says, "Judge me." A mark near the heart says, "This is not for all of you." The body is not a flat page. It has public and private zones. The Middle Ages understood this very well. Now let us imagine a tattoo fading. Years pass. Skin changes. The mark blurs. The line spreads. A cross becomes thick. A letter becomes unclear. A soldier's arm grows soft. A pilgrim's wrist wrinkles. A rebel's hidden mark becomes less sharp, but not gone. Permanent does not mean unchanged. It means the change continues inside the body. This is a useful thought. A mark made in youth may not mean the same thing in age. The pilgrim who was proud at 30 may be humble at 70. The soldier who boasted at 20 may be silent at 50. The rebel who once showed the mark only to comrades may become a grandfather who never explains the scar. The body carries old versions of the self. Not all of them are convenient. Now let us speak of outsiders at the edge of Christian Europe. There were peoples and communities across Europe and beyond with traditions of body marking, some older than Christianity, some described by outsiders in hostile or confused ways. Classical authors wrote of tattooed or painted peoples. Later Christian writers sometimes remembered such marks as signs of barbarism or pagan pasts. In the early Middle Ages and beyond, ideas about tattooed skin could become entangled with ethnicity, foreignness, and religious difference. A marked body could be seen as not fully civilized by those who defined civilization through their own customs. This is another warning. When medieval writers describe tattooed or marked outsiders, they may not be neutral witnesses. They may be using the marked body to tell readers that these people are strange, wild, sinful, or dangerous. The tattoo becomes literary evidence of otherness. Whether the description is accurate, exaggerated, or misunderstood, it shows that permanent marks had symbolic power. A body unlike ours is easier to fear. A marked body is easier to turn into a story. Now let us return to the Holy Land, where the subject becomes more tender. Eastern Christians living under changing political powers developed visible ways of carrying identity. A cross tattooed on the wrist could say, "I am Christian, even if no church bell rings for me." It could say, "My community remains." It could say, "My body remembers what rulers may not honor." For Western pilgrims, receiving such a mark may have felt like joining an older local practice. It was not invented for them. It was adopted, borrowed, purchased, misunderstood, cherished, and brought home. That is how many traditions travel. Not cleanly, not without distortion, but through contact. A pilgrim from Europe arrives. A local Christian marks him. The pilgrim returns home. Neighbors ask. The mark becomes part of Western memory. Centuries later, the practice continues in altered forms. The tattoo is both local and mobile. It belongs to Jerusalem and to every arm that carries it away. Now let us imagine the tattooer in Bethlehem or Jerusalem, later in the tradition. He has carved blocks. The designs are familiar. Pilgrims arrive in groups, especially around major holy seasons. They want marks. Some want the simplest cross. Some want something larger. Some are nervous. Some swagger. Some faint inside before anything begins. The stamp is inked or marked, pressed to the skin. The design transfers. Then the needle follows. This is efficient. Pilgrimage creates demand. Demand creates method. Method becomes tradition. A sacred souvenir becomes a craft. A craft becomes a family trade. A family trade survives centuries. The Middle Ages are full of such practical holiness. The holy place needs candles, beds, food, guides, badges, relic containers, writing, animals, and people who know how to mark skin. Even devotion has logistics. Now, because this is a sleepy history, let us spend a few moments on the sound of the needle. It is not loud, not like modern machines, just a small repeated action. Tap, prick, pause, wipe, prick, 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 a breath, a wince. Another prick. The room is warm. Someone smells of travel. Someone's wool cloak is damp. A little blood rises. The pigment darkens. The tattooer's hand remains steady. This is the whole drama at its smallest scale. No battle, no sermon, no court judgment. Only point, skin, ink, and breath. The mark enters slowly. Meaning enters later. Now let us consider aftercare. The fresh mark must heal. It may be wrapped. An inked cloth may be used in some later accounts, pressing pigment into the punctures. The arm is tender. The traveler must avoid rubbing it too much, which he will fail to do. He must keep it clean as far as travel allows, which is not very far. He may have to board a ship with a fresh tattoo, which seems medically unwise but historically plausible. Salt air, sweat, dirty sleeves, crowded quarters. A devotional mark has to survive very practical conditions. The first days are uncomfortable. The mark scabs. It itches. The pilgrim worries the ink will not hold. Then the skin settles. The mark remains. Relief, pride, a little vanity. Even holy travelers are allowed a little vanity, though they should probably confess it. Now let us return to the outcast. His mark has no aftercare except survival. If branded, the burn must heal. If tattooed or cut as punishment, the wound may be deliberately placed for visibility. Infection can be part of the cruelty, though not always intentional. Pain is certainly part of the message. A public marking could occur before witnesses. The crowd watches. Not everyone enjoys it. Some do. Crowds are not morally dependable. The person cries out, or does not. A permanent sign is made. Then life continues, but not as before. This is a terrible kind of theater. The law writes on the body. The audience learns the lesson. The marked person carries the script away. Now let us think about the morality of spectators. A pilgrim showing a tattoo invites admiration. A punished person showing a mark receives contempt. But both depend on spectators. A mark only works socially if someone sees and understands it. If no one knows what a mark means, it becomes a puzzle. If everyone knows, it becomes a sentence. A cross on the wrist is powerful because people recognize the cross. A rebel symbol is powerful within the group because members know it. A punishment mark is powerful because authorities expect recognition. The skin carries language, but language requires readers. This makes tattoos and brands unstable. Move to another region, and the meaning changes. Cross a linguistic boundary, and the mark may be misread. Change clothes, and it disappears. Age, and it blurs. Tell a different story, and perhaps the mark can be reinterpreted. A brand from punishment might be explained as a burn from war. A pilgrim tattoo might be dismissed as vanity. A rebel mark might be passed off as an old injury. The body tells stories, but people can argue with it. Now let us imagine a confessor hearing about a tattoo. A man kneels. He says he received a mark in the Holy Land. Was it sin? Was it devotion? Did pride mingle with faith? Did pain make him think of Christ or only of himself? The priest considers. One priest may be stern, another may be gentle. A cross in the flesh is not the same as a pagan sign, he might say. Or he might say the body should not be cut. Or he might prescribe a penance, because priests often had a gift for finding a penance somewhere. The man leaves uncertain, but the mark remains. This is another problem with permanent acts. The conscience changes later. The skin does not consult it. Now let us consider names. Some tattoos and brands in older worlds could include names, letters, or symbols of ownership, punishment, or belonging. In a Christian context, initials such as IHS, crosses, or sacred symbols might appear in devotional markings. Letters on skin are especially powerful because they make the body literally readable. A person becomes a document, but unlike parchment, the person can protest. A forced mark says, "This is who you are." A chosen mark says, "This is who I say I am." Many conflicts in human life can be reduced to that difference. Now let us return to the pilgrims, because they give the gentlest version of the story. A group sits together after receiving marks. Their arms are sore. They compare designs. One has a small cross. One has a larger design. One regrets the larger design. One claims his hardly hurt. No one believes him. They are tired. They have reached the end of a long journey. Some will go home. Some will die on the road. Some will keep the mark for decades. Some will show it to grandchildren. Some will be buried with it unseen beneath the sleeve. The tattoo is both public and private. It can be displayed at will, but it remains during the quiet hours when no one sees. At night, the pilgrim may wake and touch it. The skin is tender. The journey was real. He was there, or she was there. The body knows. Now let us imagine a soldier before battle touching his own cross, perhaps sewn on cloth, perhaps cut into flesh, perhaps tattooed. He is afraid. He does not say so. The cross is small. The army is large. The danger is larger. He presses his fingers to the mark. It is not magic. It does not stop arrows. It does not prevent hunger. It does not keep commanders from making stupid decisions. But it gives the mind a place to rest. A mark can be a portable prayer. That may be its deepest power. Now let us imagine a rebel in hiding touching a hidden mark. Different prayer, different fear. Not salvation, perhaps, but memory. The friends who died, the oath that failed, the hope that feels foolish now. He touches the mark because no banner remains, no meeting place remains, no leader remains, only skin. The body becomes archive, a poor one, a dangerous one, but his. Now let us think of the modern temptation to overstate. It would be easy to say that the Middle Ages were full of tattooed knights, tattooed rebels, tattooed pilgrims, tattooed monks, tattooed queens, tattooed executioners, and tattooed tavern girls laughing in candlelight. That would be fun. It would also be careless. The evidence is uneven. Tattooing existed. Permanent devotional marking existed. Pilgrim tattooing became a strong tradition in and around the Holy Land, especially visible in later sources. Crusading bodily marks are discussed, but were not universal. Punitive marking and branding existed in many forms, but details vary. Rebel tattooing as an organized art is more imaginative than documented. So the honest story is stranger and better. Tattooing in the Middle Ages was not everywhere. It was not nowhere. It appeared at the edges of certainty, at the edges of Christendom, at the edges of law, at the edges of the body. It lived where ordinary signs were not enough. A cloth cross could be removed. A badge could be lost. A spoken vow could be denied. A court sentence could be forgotten by strangers. A hidden oath could be betrayed. But a mark in the skin remained. This is why the subject matters. Tattooing is about permanence in a temporary body. And people in the Middle Ages thought constantly about the temporary body. The body that sinned, the body that suffered, the body that fasted, the body that fought, the body that traveled, the body that bled, the body that would die and rise again at the last judgment, according to Christian belief. To mark such a body was no small thing. It touched theology, law, memory, status, and fear. Now let us slow toward the ending. A pilgrim removes a sleeve by the fire. A dark cross appears on the wrist. Soldier unwraps a bandage, and sees an old mark near a newer wound. A rebel washes in a stream and covers the sign before another man sees. A punished thief keeps his hand hidden. A local Christian child in the Holy Land bears a small cross that belongs not to travel, but to community. A priest frowns. A mother worries. A tavern keeper asks questions. A gatekeeper looks too long. A tattooer cleans a needle badly but confidently. A mark is made. A mark heals. A mark fades. A mark is read. A mark is misread. A mark becomes a story. This is the forbidden art of tattooing in the Middle Ages. Not forbidden only because law or church disapproved. Forbidden because it crosses boundaries between skin and text, between faith and vanity, between punishment and identity, between suffering and pride, between the holy wound and the criminal mark, between the soldier's vow, the pilgrim's memory, and the rebel's dangerous loyalty. The same small act, putting pigment into wounded skin, can mean so many things. A cross, a shame, a proof, a secret, a warning, a prayer. Now the room grows quiet. The candle lowers. The tattooer's tools are put away. The pilgrim sleeps with a wrapped wrist. The soldier rolls his sleeve down. The rebel keeps his arm covered. The outcast walks through town with his mark hidden as well as he can. Outside, bells ring. The roads remain dangerous. The holy places remain far away. The courts remain suspicious. The body remains readable. And somewhere beneath wool, under linen, behind a cuff, near the pulse of the wrist, a small dark cross waits in the skin. It waits through sleep, through travel, through hunger, through confession, through winter, through old age. It waits after the story has been told too many times. It waits after the person no longer remembers the exact pain of the needle. It waits as the skin loosens and the lines blur. A mark made once, remaining quietly. A little wound turned into memory. A little memory turned into identity. A little identity carried through the unstable world of the Middle Ages. And now we leave it there. Not on a wall, not in a book, not in a reliquary, but in the skin, where the body, for once, becomes its own manuscript.